Hey, good morning, everybody. Good to see you. I'm so glad to be back for week number 2. I'm pumped. We're in Ruth chapter 2, okay? And so if you would please open your Bibles to the book of Ruth. If you don't have one, there's some in the chair backs around you. It'll also be on the screen. But I want to invite you to join me in Ruth chapter 2. We're working through the book of Ruth while Ian is on a month of vacation. And so we did chapter 1 last week, chapter 2 today. Next week, I'm actually off. My wife and I, my family, we're taking vacation. And so I want to introduce to you, if you don't know him, Daniel Garnett is sitting right here. Stick your hand up, buddy. That long arm, there he is. Okay, this is Daniel Garnett. And so Daniel is a chaplain with 7th Special Forces. Is that right? Nailed it. Okay, very good. And anyway, so he is going to be speaking next week, and he's going to be talking about our military ministry that he's working to help put together here at Emmanuel, and just bringing God's word. So, fun fact: Daniel and I actually went to college together way back a lifetime ago over in Graceville at the Baptist College of Florida. We came in the same semester, and we were friends. And when you move off to college, it's like whoever you kind of like park next to the first week is who you end up being friends with because you don't know anybody else really. And so evidently Daniel and I, we just kind of met up and our circles combined and we became friends, and never ever would have thought that all these years later that we would be living in the same place again. But ministry just takes you all over. It's taken him around the world. He and his beautiful family right there on that whole, they have a whole row to themselves. And so now he's back, and man, we have just been having a good time reconnecting and hanging out and everything. But he's going to be preaching next week. Super excited to have them. Love their family, love all their kiddos. All right, so Ruth chapter 2, though. Let me give a brief recap of chapter 1. Y'all, this is one of my favorite books in the Bible. Hello, new guy. Oh, you're not new. You're Ben with a beard. Look at you. Even more. Do you agree? Okay, never mind. All right, so anyhow, Ruth chapter 1, here's what happens. It starts off one of the most beautiful books in the Bible, one of the most incredible short stories ever written in all of history, not just in Scripture, but it's just an incredible piece of literature. It's an incredibly happy story that starts off incredibly sad. Super, super tragic. And we spent some time just kind of soaking in that. I caught some grief from some of my friends because they were like, hey, you were talking about Ruth being so awesome and everything, and you just left us feeling kind of deflated. I said, yeah, that was sort of the point. We're supposed to feel the weight that Naomi and Ruth are feeling, okay? And so you've got this family. They live in Bethlehem, which means house of bread, but there's no bread there because they're under a famine. And so this guy named Elimelech, his name means my God is king, he decides to move his family to Moab, which is a pagan city, about 50 miles down the road, like Pensacola or so, and they go there to try to save their lives. And what happens? Well, Elimelech dies. His wife Naomi, whose name means sweetheart, she's left without a husband, but she does have 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, whose names sound awesome, but they mean sickly and frail, like Kona and Reuben. So don't name your kids that. They end up taking Moabite wives, not a good idea, but not expressly forbidden in Scripture, and so everything seems to be bumping along. Then the boys die. We don't know what happens there. Do they get in a fight? Did somebody take what? We don't. Maybe they were just sickly and frail, and they passed away. But they die, and so Naomi and Ruth and Orpah, the other daughter-in-law, they're left alone. Naomi hears, hey, good things are happening back in Bethlehem. God has visited his people once again, and she looks around and says, I got nothing going for me here. I'm going to move back home. So they hit the road, all right, and the girls follow. But after a while, she's like, look, I've got nothing to offer you. I don't have a husband. I don't have any sons. I won't ever have any sons again. You are still young, and you can go have a life back home with your family, with your people, with your gods and your culture and everything you know. It's all back there. So just leave me alone. I have nothing else to offer you. So they kind of have this little back and forth for a little bit. Orpah eventually decides to leave, and so she pretends to be a Christian for a while, but then she decides she's not. So instead of Orpah, we call her Oprah. But Ruth hangs in there, okay? So Ruth, her name means friend or companion. And so I probably shouldn't have said that. I'll feel bad about that later. All right, so I won't do that second service. That's the one that went online, isn't it? Dadgummit, I'm going to hear about this from my wife. All right, so anyway, so Ruth, her name means companion or friend, and she hangs in there, okay? And she's like, no, I'm not leaving you, Naomi. I am sticking with you. I'm going to go where you go. Your people are going to be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. And if anything but death separates us, may God deal with me, okay? And so we said last week, we really focused on that and said, this is her moment of conversion, because it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to move with you, relocate with you, go to a place where there's food with you. I'm not doing, it wasn't wasn't just that. And it wasn't just, I feel sorry for you and I love you as a human, okay? Because she knows there's people back there it's all intertwined with her belief that the God that Naomi follows is the one true God. Okay, this is a moment where she leaves everything she knows, not only her family and her culture and her religion and all the sights and the sounds and the smells that she's grown up with. It's not just all of that, but it's I'm going in this different direction and going where your people are, and your God will be my God. And we say this was her moment of conversion. It was incredible. And I got emotional, and maybe some of you did too. It's a beautiful thing when somebody goes from death to life. And Ruth literally changed the direction of her life and went in a different place, not only to follow Naomi, but to follow her God as well. Okay, so they arrive in Bethlehem. Now, something that I did not mention last week, okay, and I failed to do this, but the last verse of chapter 1, it seems like just a cutting off point, just a capstone, just sort of a little footnote to move on to chapter 2. But it's actually incredibly weighty and incredibly heavy. It says, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. And there is so much that we learn from that verse right there. And I'm so sorry I didn't mention this last week, but what we see is that not only is there a harvest, but what does that mean? If there's a harvest, that means there's been rain. If there's been rain, then God has been involved, because y'all, you can do all you want to do, and you can plant your garden and you can work in it and pull the weeds, but if there is no rain or no water, nothing is going to grow. And so we look at this and see this is a time of hope. This is an incredible turning point because God has visited his people. Good things are happening. Things are growing. Harvest time is a time of celebration for these people. They're just thankful that they have got provision. They've got food. They've got money. They've got, that God has been good and gracious and faithful to them during this time, okay? And so that is when they arrive back home. And so everything seems hopeless and lost and bad and difficult, but they get home at the harvest time, and that shows us that things are about to turn. There's going to be good things that happen from this point forward. Okay, so, we ready? Ruth chapter 2. We're going to read the whole chapter, all right? We did this last week. Takes just a few minutes, but we can do it again, okay? Ruth chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 1. It says, Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor. And she said to her, Go, my daughter. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered, The Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, Whose young woman is this? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, She's the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. Then Boaz said to Ruth, Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, the man's name with whom I work today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi said to her, the man is a close relative of ours and one of our redeemers. And Ruth the Moabite said, Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted. So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for your word, and I pray that you would bless the reading of it, that you would teach us and encourage us and inspire us based on the things that we are reading and studying and learning, and may we grow closer to you and grow greater in our knowledge of your word as we spend time in it this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. Y'all, I love chapter 2. I get so pumped because it's like something's happened, man. You get emotionally attached to the characters in your stories, right? You know, and in chapter 1, if this was a movie, you're just thinking, oh man, poor girl. You know, everything's bad. But chapter 2, things start to happen. She gets a job. She's got community and family and people that are watching after her. Sorry, I had to get that out of my system for a second there. Love chapter 2. Okay. Chapter 3 gets a little scandalous. We'll get to that in a couple weeks. All right, chapter 2, though, everything's on the up and up. Things are good. Let me explain to you a little bit about this idea of gleaning, okay? A lot of us know what it means, but I want to just try to fully explain it just so you really understand the whole thing about it, because it's not just an act. You know, gleaning is when they would go into the field behind the people that were harvesting, that were cutting down the grain, and they would pick up whatever was falling on the ground. It's an act, but it's also a system that was put in place by God himself to care for those that were down and out. You know, the foreigner, the people that were in poverty, people that didn't have a job, people that were passing through, the sojourner. If they needed something to eat, then they could always have something and they could find something out in the fields. And so as people were working, as they're cutting the grain, if something fell on the ground, the law stated they could not pick that up. They had to leave it there. That was for the person who needed to come behind and glean, okay? If, it even went so far to say that if they were gathering up their bundles, and if somebody for some reason left one, you know, over the hill, and it was just out of sight, out of mind, they forgot about it, and somebody happens upon it, then they could keep that as well. You didn't go back to pick it up. You know, it came out of whoever's, you know, paycheck or whatever, but if somebody found that, then that was God's provision and blessing for them, okay? And so this was something that was allowed to do. It was put in the law, and it was ordained by God himself, okay? And so keep that in mind as we work through this story, because that's a very incredibly important part of the story. As we go on, we talked a lot last week about God's sovereign hand throughout the book of Ruth. And we saw that God was sovereignly involved in our suffering, okay? And today we're going to see that God is sovereignly involved, and we're going to see his hand in our provision, in his provision for us, okay? Because as we read through this, we just see how everything is lining up so beautifully, so incredibly, you know, just perfectly. Well, it's because God is sovereignly writing this story to be a beautiful and a perfect thing. It's really hard to drink water while you're trying to speak. So you just have to acknowledge it and just stop. Otherwise, you look like Napoleon Dynamite trying to do it quickly. That's not so good. Anyhow. All right, so as we move on, you know, we see that Ruth, she realizes, I've got to have a job. I've got to do something. I've got to provide for Naomi, for myself. So she gets up and she says, hey, can I go do this thing? Let me go to the field and glean. It's harvest time. This is my only option. This is all I've got available to me. Okay, and so Naomi says, all right, go do it. All right, so she goes out, and the way Scripture puts it, it's so funny. It says she just happened to come to the field of a man, to the field belonging to a man named Boaz, or something. I just messed that up. But she happened to come to a part of the field belonging to Boaz. Now, Boaz, again, I'm big on names. I like to know these names. Boaz, his name means strength, Okay, his name means strength. And we're going to see that all throughout everything that we know about the man of Boaz. He is a strong man. He is a pillar of strength. In fact, in Solomon's temple that hadn't been built yet, in Solomon's temple, there are different parts of the temple that are named different things. And one of the two main pillars that supported the whole thing, one of those was named Boaz. It was named after this man. It was named after this man who was a pillar of strength in his own community, in his own family, in his own home, and ultimately, in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. When I was in college, I started reading, I read a couple of books by this guy named Stu Weber. He's a pastor and an author, and he just talks about biblical manhood, and one of his books called Tender Warrior, I read that book just over and over several times, and then a buddy of mine, he gave me that book on cassette. You guys remember cassettes way back? All right, so I listened to that book on cassette, and then I literally wore the tapes out because I would just flip it back and forth, and that was just all I listened to as I was doing all my driving. But another book that he wrote is called The 4 Pillars of a Man's Heart. Okay, and he says that a man's heart is propped up by 4 pillars, and those pillars are king, warrior, mentor, and friend. And I just find it interesting that we see Boaz, he is called a worthy man, okay? And one of these pillars was in Solomon's temple was named after him, and it just brought me back to that book that I had read, The 4 Pillars of a Man's Heart, King, Warrior, Mentor, and Friend. It's on my shelf. If anybody wants to borrow it, you can. Or both of those books. They're great. All right, so, or you can buy your own. All right, so anyhow, the idea of Boaz being a worthy man, okay, what we know about that, the reason he would be called a worthy man, basically is because he understands those 4 pillars and he lives those out in his life. The pillar of being a king, a warrior, a mentor, and a friend. Basically, he's a man of honor. He is a man of respect. He knows how to watch after the things that are under him. He knows how to take care of people. He knows how to stand up for what is right. And we see so many of these qualities in his life in how he deals with his workers, with his business, and with people that he really doesn't owe anything to, but he decides to be kind to them because it's the right thing to do. We learn so much from Boaz. He is the guy that I think young men need to aspire to be like. He is a man among men, okay? And so he comes rolling up to his field, in his big diesel truck, motor rolling, wah, 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 wah. He jumps out, and he sings a blessing over his workers. The Lord be with you. And they call back, and the Lord bless you. Like, how many of you guys, when your boss comes walking in, now mine does this because he's my pastor, but how many of you guys, your boss comes rolling up, and he just sings a blessing over you. The Lord be with you. And you all pop up out of your cubicles like a bunch of whack-a-moles, and the Lord be with you as well. I don't know if you work in cubicles, but he's got a good relationship with the people that work for him, with his servants. This shows us he's not just making sure that everything is taken care of and that, he's not concerned just about the bottom line, but he's also concerned about the people over whom he has influence. And so he's watching after them in a spiritual manner as well. Something that we learned last week is that life is about so much more than just the food that we fill our stomachs with. And we talked about Elimelech. My God is king, Elimelech, but he let his family down because he wasn't following God. He was following his stomach and his bank account and his upward mobility and his next financial opportunity. And he neglected his family because he took them away from biblical community where they could be spiritually invested into and be strong. And bad things happen. But Boaz is a man that has a lot going for him, but he understands deep down the greatest need is for spiritual connection and wellness. And so he calls out to his workers, the Lord be with you. And so just a beautiful interaction there. And then he takes notice of what's going on. He takes a look around, and he sees somebody that he doesn't recognize. So he goes over. He says he goes over to his young man who's in charge of the servants, who's in charge of the harvesters. So I see this guy as Brian Spicer. He's their church administrator. So he goes over, he's like, hey, Spicer, who's this person? And Spicer's like, let me check my clipboard here. And, that would be Ruth, the Moabitess. And so everybody's heard about Ruth the Moabitess because they're all on Facebook. And you remember when they showed up, all the women were talking, and they're just, oh, Naomi's back and everything, and here's Ruth. And so they're pumped, man, And so Brian Spicer, I wish Brian were here this morning. He would get a kick out of this. He's out today. Anyway, so he checks on that. He wants to see who it is. He finds out who it is. And what does he do next? He directly approaches her. He doesn't just stand back and watch, and he doesn't just keep his eye on her from a distance, but he goes directly to her to offer condolences, companionship, friendship, not companionship like, hey, but he's just wanting to connect with her and make sure that she knows that she's in a safe place and wants to make sure that she knows that she is being watched out for. And so he goes up to her. And in verse 8, I see this as like, I don't know, he's probably got like, he's an older guy. She's younger, he's older. I don't know what the age difference is, but there is a difference there. And he says to her, my daughter, but I think he approaches her kind of with this James Earl Jones Mufasa voice. Now listen, my daughter. Everything that the sunlight touches, And so he just encourages her to stay here because you'll be safe. You'll be taken care of. And I want to make sure that you have all the things that you need. And he goes on so far as to say, hey, anything that you need, make sure that you come to us for that. Any water, when you get thirsty, we've already drawn water for you. Now, in this culture, the women drew the water for the men. But here he's saying, my young men have drawn the water. Go drink out of it. Even though you're a woman, you're a stranger, you're a foreigner from a pagan land, have at it because you're going to need it. I want you to have the things that you need. Okay? We see that, that he provides companionship and community by way of telling her, hey, stick with the young women that are working in my field. He's not just telling her, hey, go hang out behind the guys, but he says, hey, I've got these young women as well. Go work with them. Go work alongside them. They'll watch after you. Maybe you'll learn some things. He's providing community and companionship for her, in a way that we see that Boaz is like the polar opposite of what Elimelech was. Elimelech wasn't concerned with community, companionship, and spiritual encouragement, but Boaz is. All of these things within their first interaction, we learn that Boaz has this going for him. Okay? And so then he goes on. Sorry, I am just parched. It's rough, y'all. All right, so he goes on, and at mealtime, not only is he taking care of her with just water, but he says, hey, come over here and eat. It's lunchtime. Didn't you hear the bell? Why are you still working? Get out, come over here, sit in the shade. And he provides her a meal, so much so that she's got leftovers, okay? And so she's able to bring something home to her mother-in-law. Now, at the end of all of this, they go back to work and everything, but he approaches her again. He's like, come back tomorrow. Keep showing up, okay? I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to watch after you. And none of this is like in this weird, creepy sort of way. He's not making his move, okay? In fact, he's kind of slow on that. We're going to learn that in a couple of weeks. But he's not making a move here. He's just making sure she has what she needs. He's just watching after her, okay? He says, you go somewhere else and it may not go very well for you. He doesn't say that in a threatening way. He says that in an encouraging way. If you're here, you'll be protected. And Naomi knows this, and she kind of backs that up by saying, look, if you go somewhere else, you might be assaulted out in the field. Even though God had put this system of gleaning in place, doesn't mean that it was glamorous or good. And you're like, well, I don't want to go to work today. I think I'll go glean instead. It wasn't like an option that you just chose. It wasn't a career path that you're just like, I don't have to go I'll just glean. I'll be a gleaner. That's what I'll do. No, it wasn't a glamorous thing. It was a dangerous thing. It was a dirty thing. It was a difficult, sweaty job. And that's what Ruth is doing. But he's saying, don't go anywhere else. You might get assaulted. Somebody else may pick on you. You may not have all the things you need. If you keep coming here, I will watch after you, and you'll have all the stuff that you need. Okay, what do we see here? What was her result from the end of the day? It says that she went, okay, she gets all the wheat, and then she goes and she has to beat it out. That's where you have to grind if you know anything about wheat or barley, it grows in a husk. You don't want to eat the outside. It's crunchy and bad and all. And so they grind it up, and then they throw the bad stuff away. It's called chaff. It burns really well. We'll talk about that in a couple weeks. They like to set it on fire like a bunch of rednecks, and it was awesome. So really, that's what happens in chapter 3, part of what happens. And so anyway, she just takes the good stuff, the grain home, and it says it's about an ephah, okay? And so put that in our terms today. This would be about 2.5 to 3 weeks worth of food for Naomi and Ruth. Okay, so in a day's worth of work, she's gotten paid about 1 to 2 weeks' wages, okay? So Ruth is making bank here. She's doing pretty good. Boaz has also said, hey, he calls his guys together after lunch. He's like, hey, let her glean, but also, throw some out on the ground, like just kind of like, a little accident. Forgot that, and let her have extra. Make sure she's got more than enough. Because I want to make sure that she's taken care of. He knows her story. He knows she's got this Naomi baggage and carry on back home. He's not making moves. He's just trying to take care of her in a good and godly way. And so Ruth, she goes home with a lot of grain, and she carries it home herself. And she gets home, and Naomi's just blown away. And so we start to see this little bit of a twinkle come back to Naomi's eye. She goes from being sweetheart to now she moves back home and says, don't call me sweet, call me bitter. Because God has just removed his hand of blessing from me. I'm bitter. I'm not sweet anymore. But here she's like, oh my goodness, what in the world happened? Where did you go? How did you get this? How did you earn this? And so Ruth says, hey, this is where I worked, and this is who I worked with, and his name is Boaz. And then Naomi's just like blown away. Oh my gracious. This is one of our relatives. This is one of our redeemers. Now, did she know that beforehand? No. It says that she just happened to show up in this field. Okay, and we're going to talk about the just so happened thing in just a moment. But she just happened Naomi didn't send her out to Boaz's field on purpose ahead of time. Okay, this wasn't Naomi's plan. This was God's plan. And Naomi realizes that, wait a second, this could be bigger than just today. This could be bigger than just the next couple of weeks here. Like something may happen here. And Naomi, the wheels start spinning. She starts thinking. Naomi she's a crafty old lady. All right, so I dig her, man. I like Naomi. We're going to talk about her more in 2 weeks' time. Okay, so let's back up a little bit and talk about that just so happened thing. Okay. When we're reading through this would be like, in today's terms, we might say, as luck would have it. And people, they feel this way, that things happen just by coincidence. And this is not coincidence, chance, circumstance, happenstance, karma, good luck. It isn't any of those things. I don't believe in any of that. And if you've ever read Scripture, you shouldn't believe in those things either. I believe that God's sovereign hand leads and guides the things that we do. And he brings us to the places that we need to go. And we don't always know where he's leading us. We didn't know what God was doing in chapter 1, all right, but God was setting up chapter 2. And he sovereignly led Ruth to this place. And if you can read the Hebrew, which I can't, but if you can read it, we see the author has no intention to lead us to believe it was just dumb luck. It's more of a play on words that it just so happened. There's an inflection there and an emphasis that we can't see and can't really understand in our English language. And again, I don't read Hebrew, but I can read English from people who can read Hebrew, so just trust me on this, okay? So God is sovereignly involved, and he is leading Ruth to this place of provision. Let me tell you some things that we learn about Ruth, okay? Some things that we learn about Ruth. First of all is that she's loyal. Oh, my gracious. She's so loyal. She's living out her namesake, companion or friend. She's loyal to her mother-in-law because she goes out to do this hard, difficult thing, and she does it day after day after day. It's not, like I said, it's not a glamorous thing. Now, she's making a good, she's getting a lot of return for her investment, for her work, but it's not an ideal situation. Okay, it's not something that you just want to continue doing. But she's loyal because she knows this is what I need to do to take care of Naomi. So she's loyal. She's hardworking. Obviously, we see that. She does this difficult thing day after day. She's also just incredibly grateful. When Boaz encounters her and confronts her and talks to her, she falls on her face, not in any weird way, but just this was a cultural thing. She's just showing, I'm so thankful and grateful for what you're doing. Thank you for doing this. But also, something really interesting to me that I'd love to see here is that, again, this system of gleaning was put into place by God himself, and it was written into their law. And so they didn't have to ask permission to go do this. If you needed to glean, you just went and did it. But Ruth asked permission. And we learned that as Brian Spicer informs him later. Yeah, she came and asked if she could do this, and she's worked hard all day long. And so Ruth, just the fact that she would just ask, hey, can I do this? Can I be involved in this? This is what I need. And of course, they say, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. All right, but the fact that she would just ask permission, I don't know, it just says something to me. Like she's she's got good manners. She's got good manners, and she just seems to be thinking about other people and making sure that she is not out of line, but that she is just doing everything the right way. Ruth is she is somebody that our young women today and our daughters ought to aspire to be. And likewise, I've said that Boaz, he is a man that our young men and our sons should aspire to be. Let me show you some things that we learn about Boaz. We've already talked about him being a worthy man. Okay, and basically, I've already talked about most of the things about Boaz that we see from him. He's a worthy man. He's a man that is upstanding and strong and righteous. He provides for his servants. He provides for foreigners, for strangers, for people that he doesn't even know. He provides food, water, grain, lunch, drinks for Ruth. Okay. He also sends home extra for her mother-in-law, all right? But what else is he providing? Something else more important that I've talked about. He's providing protection and companionship and friendship and spiritual encouragement by way of allowing Ruth and encouraging her to work with the young women that work for him. And so he is looking after deeper needs than just the physical and just the things that we see up front that need to be provided for her. He's also watching out and making sure that she has the protection and just the basic safety that she needs. He is looking after her in a way that would cost him money, but that seems to be the least of his concerns. He just wants to make sure she has enough and more than enough. Boaz is a man among men and somebody that we should aspire to be, we should look up to. I want to do something now that I don't normally get to do when I'm talking through the book of Ruth, and that is, and I want to be extremely careful about doing this, but I want to speak for just a moment to our single people, our single men in particular. And next time we'll talk to the single ladies just a little bit, or if you're not single, don't tune me out. Still listen, because this may be something that you may be able to pass along to somebody that you know who is single. And I say I don't get to do this very often because when I'm speaking to teenagers, I'm not trying to encourage them to look for the love of their life out in the field. Not going to do that. Much of my job is helping to undo some of the damage of a guy that thought, I'm going to be like Boaz, and then he goes and screws everything up, So I don't encourage relationships in high school. That's just me personally. But I get the chance now because I'm in front of adults. This is a rare thing. And I'm in the driver's seat. You're just along for the ride. So this is just how it's going to be. All right, so here's what I want to say. I talk to young men a lot. They're like, man, I'm looking for a wife. Man, I want to date. Man, I want, this and that, and I'm just lonely, and I'm looking for somebody, blah, blah, blah. I was having a conversation with a friend just this week who said, here's the thing. I'm like a 3, and I'm attracted to like 8s and 9s, And so, he wasn't just talking like physically, just personally and emotionally and everything else. He's like, he's self-aware enough to realize I'm kind of like, I need to do some work. And, but here's where I'm looking for something that's just way out of my league. Well, let me just point out something that we see from Boaz. Now, we do find in time that there is an interest that Boaz has, but he kind of thinks, Ruth is like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and I'm sort of a 3, and and I'm too old, and she's out of my league and all. But something that I notice is that Boaz, he didn't seem to have this long list of qualifications that somebody had to meet in order to win his approval. He just rolled up, hopped out of the truck, looked across the field, and there she was. He asked about her and says, well, there's somebody in front of me that I can take care of and be friends with. I'm going to take care of her and be friends with her. And that's kind of how it got started. And so maybe if you're like, oh, I'm just lonely, I'm looking for somebody, how about look for somebody that's right in front of your face? It may be that it just so happens that God has provided the companionship that you need right there in the field that you've already showed up to work in. Might be. Maybe. It's possible. Now, I know that, that there's lots of books written about this subject, and there's lots of magazine articles you could pick up and read in the checkout line of the grocery store. Of course, you're all too upstanding and solid to do anything like that, but I know you do. All right, or there's lots of websites and all these things that you could go to try to learn some things. And of course, if you're single, you talk to your single friends, you're trying to figure out the dating pool and all that. And that's an option for you, okay? And I don't claim to be an expert on relationships, but I have been happily married for 18 years now. So maybe I do know a thing or two, all right? If you've got this strict list of all these qualifications that somebody has to meet that just makes them look so incredible and like unattainable, here's the thing. If you've got that list, but you haven't met her, she's not looking for you because she's got options, okay? So look where you are, okay? And just look for the person that you can care for and maybe just see what God does with that. I don't know. Just a crazy idea, but it's just so crazy it might work. It has worked in my life. My relationship with my wife didn't start off as a romantic relationship. She was a friend who was in front of my face that I just happened to be friends with, and then I realized I care for her. And just a few months later, we were engaged. All right, so, because I move fast. All right, so, enough of that. Enough of the relationship stuff. Ladies, I know it's weird, but I'm going to talk to you next time around. All right. So what are we? Let's try to wrap this thing up, land this plane, okay? What are we gathering from this? First of all, we see again that God's hand of provision is just incredibly evident throughout this whole thing. Was it obvious and evident last week in chapter 1? Maybe not. Probably not. All right. So I just want to again encourage you that it's just so important that when we are going through hard things, we don't see what God is doing in that moment. I get that. I'm not asking anybody to be grateful for the difficulty that we're walking through. Oh man, my car just got wrecked and I lost my job and it's awesome because I know God's doing something. No, it's terrible and it's okay to sit in that for a little bit, all right? Nobody needs to be grateful and thankful for the bad thing when the bad thing is going on. Nobody's asking that, okay? Naomi, she mourned over the loss of her husband and her sons, and she's moving and she's pushing people away. That's okay. We see that, all right? But it's important for us to see stories where we know how it plays out, like we do in this one. And it's important for us to look back in our lives at our own story, at the hardship we've walked through and seen how God has worked on the other side of that, so that when we're in a moment right now that I don't know what's going to happen, I can be reminded if God was faithful in the past, then he will continue to be faithful as we move forward. And it may not be the way I want it to work out, but God will still be faithful, and he is still doing something, and I'm a part of his story. Okay, it's not just that he's writing mine, but I'm also a part of his story, and I'm a member of his kingdom, and his kingdom is what I need to be involved in and focused on more so than just the thing that I'm going through. Okay, and so if I can be a part of the story that God is writing in all of creation, that's helpful, okay? But if I can remember back to how God has brought me through difficulty, that may be critical, all right? So remember those things that God has brought us through and has brought others through. Let me also say this, that just like Boaz, looking after people that need help is one of the critical and foundational things that I believe we are all called to. Whether it's somebody that needs help in a financial way because life is hard and they've lost a job or they don't have a job, or whether it's somebody that needs help by way of community and friendship and family. If it's somebody that needs help just acclimating or transitioning to something different, from one thing to the next, people are not meant to be alone. And Boaz looks out and he recognizes that. And he doesn't put Ruth through this interview process to see, are you worth my time? Are you one of the good ones or the bad ones? You say you're a believer and you've left your pagan place, but you know what, do you really believe everything I believe, in order for me to be, no, he doesn't do any of that. He just says, hey, here's a human that's in front of me that needs some help, and I have the opportunity to help. Yeah, you're the one, you'll do, I'll help you. I'll give you friendship. I'll give you companionship. I will give you, the food that you need. I will watch after you and help provide some safety and protection because this is nothing for me. I can totally do this. I got this, So look for the people that are around you that you can impact and that you can help, in whatever way that you have the opportunity to help. I believe that is incredibly foundational to this story. Okay? And as we see the way that God uses this story throughout the greater story that he's writing, we'll see that, man, just basic human kindness and decency played a role in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. And so I have to believe that that is something that is close to his own heart, all right? And lastly, I just want us to consider this. There's a pastor, a preacher. His name is Charles Spurgeon. He's dead a long time ago. But some of you may be familiar with him. You may have heard of him. C.H. Spurgeon or Charles Spurgeon. He was known as the Prince of Preachers because of his oratory skills and he's just a guy that I'll never be. But anyhow, it's not the point. The point is this. Okay, something that C.H. Spurgeon said was that that Jesus Christ is our great and glorious Boaz. That was something that Spurgeon said. You may have heard it said that Jesus is the true and better Boaz, and I agree with that. But Jesus being our great and glorious Boaz, let me just kind of break that down for a minute. What that might look like, and how we see the gospel starting to be played out in the story of Ruth, in the book of Ruth. Now, we've already seen Ruth come to faith in the one true God, and she's passed from death to life and entered into the family of God. We've seen that in chapter 1, all right? But now we start to see a little bit of what Jesus might do for us by way of being our great and glorious Boaz. Jesus is a man who is worth imitating and following. He is a man among men. He is a man that looked at the people around him and cared for the ones that were in front of his face. He had ambition and dreams and goals, but it wasn't just about, he wasn't going to step on other people to get there. He knew that his message was going to spread around the world, and it started with the people that were right next to him. He took time for those that were hurting. He helped those that needed it. He fed those who were hungry. He healed those who were sick. He was friends with people that were taboo, that nobody in their society or in their culture gave any thought to except to look down upon. And Jesus ate with those kind of people in their own home and allowed them, he ministered to them and allowed them also to minister to him as well. We remember stories of him being anointed with oil by people that others looked down upon. But Jesus interacted with those kind of people. And I see Boaz doing some of the same sort of stuff here. He rolls up. He's got everything to offer, and he decides to encounter this young foreign previously pagan girl who's out there all, sweaty and dirty and pitted out in the field. And he walks up to her and he says, "Hey, I can help you. I want to help you. I want to be kind to you." And we see that Jesus does some of the same kind of thing to us. And when we talk about how we are to be the hands and feet of Christ, and we need to help other people feel the love of God in their own lives, that's not just a spiritual and emotional thing. Now, I've already made a big point to say that life is about more than just our physical needs. It's about our spiritual need. Our greatest need is not food. Our greatest need is to be connected to God the Father. But that plays out in very physical ways. We read in the book of James. James is saying, look, if somebody is hungry or naked, and we say to them, "Hey, be filled and be clothed," but we don't actually do anything for them, we've done more harm than good. We've got to actually connect with people on a physical level. If somebody needs something, if they need food, if they need companionship, friendship, if they're hurting, whether I agree with their hurt or not, if I can just feel and have some empathy for their story, then that is a start to being able to build a bridge, to be a Boaz in the life of that person. So look at the way this man lives, the very practical way that he plays out his faith and encounters other people, and the way that plays out in his life, and do the same in our own. Because when we do that, we get to help other people feel the goodness of God. And as they feel it on a personal, physical level, then God starts to open doors and open hearts so that they can connect with him on the spiritual level to meet the greatest need that we all have, which is to be connected to God through Jesus Christ. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. Thankful for our time in the book of Ruth. So grateful for men like Boaz who show us more about what it is to live like Christ. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for your word and our time together in it this morning. And God, I pray that we would all just take these things to heart, that we would look for opportunities to serve somebody else around us, that we would be kind and gracious with the things that we have, so that somebody might feel safe and feel loved and feel cared for. And ultimately, they might be able to feel on a personal and practical level just a small bit of the love that you have for them on a spiritual level. God, I pray that as Jesus is our great and glorious Boaz, that we might be like Boaz in the community and in the world around us. God, I pray that you would just not leave us alone until we consider how it is that we can use the things and the opportunities and the life that we have to connect and meet needs with other people, just like people have done all throughout our lives. God, we thank you that you continue to write our story. In Jesus' name, amen.